Welcome to this show. Segment of the show, Calm Down with James Eade. And this segment is to help us calm down using yoga methodologies, yoga principles, yoga practices. And I have a yoga teacher and therapist with us now. Yudisthira, would you join us? Thank you. There you are.
Here
Uh,
I am.
you were backstage all the time, weren't you?
I was indeed.
So today we're going to go on to talk about the chakras. Is that right?
We are, and we'll see how it goes. There's a lot to
Okay.
cover.
Well, I will leave you to it and let
Okay.
me know if I can be of any assistance. But I will be backstage.
Okay. Well, if you can go ahead and let's see what that. Uh,
Image?
I'll cue you when it's time to put up that
Yeah,
image. Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. Great.
Okay. You can blame your producer if there's any
Uh,
problem.
hello, friends, and um, for those of you who've been following along, we um, have come through the yamas, niyamas of yoga. Last week, I actually extended the yamas, niyamas into their natural progression, which is to say that there are 8 stages of awakening that are described in yoga by one of the principal um, chronicle chroniclers of yoga. His name was Patanjali. Um, and it's not terribly important to know anything about him in particular. In fact, oftentimes during in the Yoga Sutras, he would refer to himself in the third person in the same way that sometimes Rumi or Hafiz will do in their poetry. So this idea of the chakra system is something that has become so popular that it has lost some of its meaning. Um, and as I say, it's been adopted in sort of a new age way. Now, on one hand, that's not a bad thing. I mean, for the idea of energy centers within us to become part of popular culture, I don't consider that to be a negative. It's only to say that it's similar to things like karma, that people use karma, they toss around the word a lot without really having a true understanding of what it means, other than, in the case of karma, it means something that comes back to you like a boomerang. And so people want instant karma. So when it comes to the chakras, a lot of people are sort of caught in some sort of a ungrounded sort of a place, talking about seeing the colors of the chakras. Again, not a bad thing. Only to say that there's a depth of meaning, and to understand that the chakras are not imaginary. In order to actually begin with the talking about the chakras, we need to think about, first of all, karma and reincarnation, because in the bigger picture of karma and reincarnation, there is this recycling of the essence of who you are or I am through many lifetimes, and never completely remembering previous lifetimes, but having hints of them that come to us. And those hints tend to come to us as coming from one of these energy centers, the chakras, or another. Let me give you a metaphor that works beautifully. The energy system of the chakras flows through a main pathway. I'm not going to use all the Sanskrit names, but this main pathway is an energy pathway, and it's not unlike a uh, underground conduit through which water flows. And think of it in terms of a stream or a creek or a river, that this river of energy that runs through you, when the energy is high and the flow of energy is to capacity, everything is moving upward freely. However, just like a stream or a river, when the water runs low, when the energy becomes low, some things begin to happen. And this energy river, just like a river in the material world, when the water level goes down, stuff begins to accumulate in little depressions along the edge of the river. And so stuff gets trapped there. That stuff often ends up going around and around in a circle. In a river, we would call that an eddy. But in the chakras, we call it a vritti, V-R-I-T-T-I. It's just a little spinning whirlpool where energy is trapped. Now, in the energy system of the chakras is not sticks and leaves and other debris that accumulate and go round and round. But just like that eddy in a river, when the river rises and the energy begins to flow, that debris gets washed away. And what was trapped there becomes able to move along and expand into the ocean. All these are really excellent metaphors for the energy system of the chakras. Now, the energy system of the chakras itself, usually we count them as 7 in total. I'm going to give you a slightly different view of that, and I'll explain it why in just a moment. So at this point, I want to ask Jim to please go ahead and put up that image if you can. There you go. And can I move to the side? I think I can. There we go. Everything's backwards here, so there we go. All right, so that's enough that I can begin to talk to you a little bit about what you're seeing on the screen. So the chakra system is one that goes from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. Now, the picture that Jim has put up there only contains a tiny little bit of information, but it's enough to get us started. And so it's helpful to know that each of these energy centers has a reference that we can make to the physical spine. Here's the problem with doing that. We oftentimes think of the material spine as being the reality, and the energy system is sort of an extension of that. And it's exactly the reverse. It's completely turned around. The physical spine manifests itself from the energy pattern. Everybody knows that this works in daily life. I think it's worthwhile to note that for all of us who are viewing this right now, that there is not a thorough knowledge for most of us about how this is happening. How is my image? How is my voice? How is this show being brought to you on a computer or a cell phone? All these things involve technologies that are non-physical realities. They all come down to a movement of energy in predictable patterns that end up resulting in things that our senses can actually perceive. So in working with the system of the chakras, it's helpful to understand that it's not really that big of a stretch to realize that these chakras are a non-physical reality, but they are more permanent, more long-lasting than the physical form that we presently are in. So karma and reincarnation means that as we move from lifetime to lifetime, we keep accumulating karma, which lodge in different chakras like seeds or, again, vrittis, that in another incarnation, given the right circumstance, those seeds will sprout and give us the opportunity to either master or overcome that thing that has been carried over. And you can look at it as something either positive, like, hey, things went so well in this lifetime that, I expect everything's going to go great from here on out. And so then that next lifetime, you might have that seed of success sprout only to find that nothing works out, because that's what you need. The end result of all karma is not positive or negative, it's neutral. The nature of karma is that everything balances out. So when we begin working our way up through the chakras, it's helpful to recognize that they have a quality that is always going to become more expansive as you work your way up. And as you begin at the very first quality, or first chakra rather, and here you'll see that they have words that are in Sanskrit. And then they have a red label next to them that has that quality that relates to that chakra. And then below each one, you'll see that it relates to or is oriented to the physical spine. So the Muladhara chakra is sometimes called the root or earth chakra. It is located relative to the coccyx. If you want right now, and I'm looking at my clock to make sure I don't run too much over, if you squeeze the pelvic floor and anus, close your eyes, and then relax those muscles, the center of where the tension was is going to be the location of that root chakra. So the first chakra is related to the earth element. It's solid, it's grounded in the physical body. It relates to the legs and feet. The Swadhisthana chakra, this next one up, is relative to the sacral region, and its element is water. I'm not going to ask you to squeeze muscles around each of these. Maybe we will do that in the future. It's helpful. But water is much more changeable in its nature. The second chakra has a lot to do with those things that are deeply sensual. And I don't mean that simply in terms of sex, but it does apply to that. But the quality of this chakra is that of fluidity. Creativity is very much originates, that is channeled through this. People with relationship issues that come up over and over again in a lifetime will want to look at this particular chakra and begin to learn how to work with it and to free up the energy that's in it. The third chakra up is behind the navel, behind the abdominal organs, and in front of the lumbar spine. And the element there is fire. The quality of this not only is fire, but also of fiery self-control. That you learn to contain this fire and use it for your personal spiritual growth. I hope it is becoming clear that the qualities, the positive qualities of each of these is an additive quality. It's you add it to the one above it, and they become a single flow that is of increasing power and also increasingly potentially expansive. When we come to the heart center, Vishuddha, it is the cervical center that is behind the heart in front of the thoracic spine. Its quality is that of ether. Now, ether here is not the substance, although the chemical formula of ether itself is very expansive. It's volatile. And that's the nature of the heart's tendency when it's focused in the material world. It tends to be volatile. I really love this. I really hate that. When we come up to the next level above it, I'm sorry, I got off track. The heart center is the anahat, and the quality is air. I apologize. I'm looking at my clock here, and I know I'm going to go over by a minute. So the anahat center is air, and air, again, like a hot air balloon. When it's heated, it rises, it expands. The Vishuddha chakra is the throat chakra. That is where ether, and this center can be extremely volatile. Think about what happens when the heart is angry, what happens to your words. When the heart is at peace, the center is calm. And so the Vishuddha center is associated with the quality of calmness. When it comes to the sixth center, which is the spiritual eye, my guru pointed out very clearly that it has two poles like a magnet. The negative pole is at the medulla, the base of the brain, where all of our animal functions originate. We don't have to think about breathing. Our primal instincts are all originate here, and it can lead to a lot of problems. And this is the seat of the ego, which is simply the spirit identified with the body and mind. The positive pole is here, the spiritual eye. A lot of people know about the spiritual eye. This is the Agya center. Yogananda described this as super ether that is like infinite space. There is a seventh chakra, which is called the Sahasrara, and it's sometimes called the thousand-petaled lotus. It's also called the crown chakra, and it is, when it's fully open, we have achieved the goal of yoga, which one would say in the 8 limbs of yoga, we have reached samadhi. So that is an introduction to it, and it is just the bare beginning because there is so much more. And so, but I think that's enough for today. So, Jim?
Yes, Yudisthira, that was great. Thank you so much for that. I learned a lot, although I practice the chakras every day. But I wrote down instant karma. You and I know.
We want karma to be instant, and it simply, the reality is that oftentimes karma, we don't even remember why something's coming our way.
Yes, of course. And also, it's like I used to say, immediate gratification was not good enough for me. It wasn't fast enough.
Well, your book on freedom from addiction is a great example of people who are addicts. They look at all kinds of things, their childhood, the relationship, their mother and father, the models they had. And I'm not saying those aren't important, but those are also part of the karma. And the bigger karma is for them to recognize that the addiction that they are experiencing has great implications for future lifetimes. Because for those people who are able to successfully overcome addiction in this lifetime, it is huge.
Yes.
And I recognize it within my own lifetime.
Right.
That turning point for me, when I no longer craved drugs or alcohol or improper relationships with people.
Right.
When those things ceased, then I immediately had the sense of being free.
Yes.
And yet, that addiction that I suffered from, and I would say that is true for all addictions, no matter whether it's to money or sex or booze or whatever.
Right.
That all addictions have their origins in previous lifetimes.
And the eddy that you were talking about, something stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are simply like really big eddies where a lot of stuff is trapped. And so it takes a lot of energy, and some of it is also willpower to begin to increase that flow of energy. Anyway, there's a lot, about that,
Right.
but it's willpower will only take us so far.
Absolutely. That has been certainly my experience. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit with you, or to reinforce with you how important it is for me, is that everything is about getting in balance, that karma is neutral. And I think of it in terms of my different, the mind, the heart, the spirit. I want to be integrated. I had a friend that said, your ego is not an amigo, your amigo. And I want to be friends with my ego too. I don't want to push it aside or shunt it aside or think badly of it. My ego can get me in trouble, certainly. But if I can be friends with it, then it's going to help me, just as my heart. If I can, and I loved the way if your heart is angry, then your words fail you. Yeah, it's so that's the integration. So if you can be calm, then you can say what you mean.
I've come to think of my ego more like a well-trained dog, and a smart dog, like a German Shepherd, not a beagle, a German Shepherd. And
Nothing against beagles.
Nothing against beagles. I had one. That's why I know that beagles operate only from one primal instinct, and that's food.
Yeah. Yeah. My labs were like that. Loving dogs, but
But a German Shepherd,
food
when well
oriented.
trained, becomes a wonderful ally. And that's how the ego is that the ego abides in the area of us, which is the region of subconsciousness.
Yes.
And in the subconscious region, we can either have bad habits, and the ego certainly enjoys that,
Right.
or it can be replaced with good habits, and then the ego becomes a wonderful ally,
Yes.
a wonderful friend. And Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda, my teacher and guru, respectively, um, both made it very clear the ego is not the enemy.
Right. That's
Yeah.
where I was going. Yeah.
And people really, really have somehow come into this place where the ego is the enemy,
Right.
and that's unfortunate because the ego is necessary.
Yes.
It has to be brought on board.
Right.
But you can catch it. All you have to do is sit down and see if you can still your mind, get the mind completely still, see if you can do it for 30 seconds.
Yes.
And if you can, good for you. Try it for a minute. Everyone is going to have some limit. For most people, well, actually, I have to be honest, for me, when I first began, it was in the matter of seconds that my mind would be still. And then something would occur. My ego wanted attention.
Yes.
And so it's been a lot of willpower, a lot of training, but also a lot of divine grace. That's allowed me to come to this place where I can now keep my mind still for extended periods of time.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah. Well, Divya, the woman who's going to close the show, taught me because I had the same problem, and I wanted to be taught how to meditate because I couldn't do it. And she asked me why I couldn't, and I said monkey mind. And she said, "Well, can you visualize clouds in the sky rolling through?" And I said, "Yes." She says, "Every time the monkey starts to chatter, put a monkey on the cloud and let it drift away." And about a couple 500 monkeys later, I was able to be calm for a minute, and then it grew from there. And so you have to start someplace, and baby steps at first, but you can calm your mind, and that stillness is very useful. But I love that the ego is your ally if it's well trained.
Exactly. And so
there's one other thing I wanted to comment on in my practices. When we're talking about the sixth chakra, and making conscious contact with the spiritual eye.
Are you talking about the crown chakra?
Oh no, the
spiritual eye.
Spiritual eye. Yeah, that's the fifth. Then I lost count. So the spiritual eye, thinking when I'm trying to make conscious contact, visualize it. I'm thinking of the eternal now. So what you were talking about just triggered that thought in me that's the way I visualize it. If I can, just be fully present right here, right now. And that's the stillness aspect of it as well. And so I use a visualization of that, and I wait until I can see it before I proceed. And
there's a lot, you have a lot of experience, and I don't, it's not universal by any means yet, but you have a lot of experience that you're drawing from, and that ability, for example, using Divya's model is one, there's many variations on that, but that's a great one. Mm-hmm. And, for myself in my own practice, oftentimes what I will do is to take a period of time in which I'm using certain techniques, but it's about existing without my body and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it means I'm in a place that at first would seem to be completely silent and absent of light and absent of awareness. And none of those are true. When you come into that place, all of those senses, every one of them, the touch of the sense of feel,
yes,
sight, sound, smell, taste, they all have an inner dimension. But you and I are right now using words to describe these non-verbal realities.
Yes.
Almost, it's so contradictory, and yet it's the best we can do.
Yeah. Right.
It is truly the best we can do. When we talk about getting centered at the point between the eyebrows, what does that mean?
Right.
Well, you have to experience it to know what it means.
Yes, that was I couldn't really relate until I had the experience, and then I could relate. And as you said, trying to communicate it is almost beyond my abilities. So it's just something you have to experience. But you can be trained to experience it, to get closer and closer to it.
The first sermon that the Buddha gave, he sat down with a flower. He sat still. His students were there. He spoke no words. He held the flower out. And the sermon was not that he was holding a flower or that he was silent. It was that the beauty in the flower was beyond words. And the flower was just an image that people could latch onto.
Right.
But the flower was within them.
Oh.
And so you don't need the words if people are ready to go beyond words. But one of the gifts that you have is one of the gifts that I've been given as well, is to be able to talk about these things in a way that brings people closer to the experience and to share techniques that will actually allow them to experience, so no words are necessary.
Yes. And this is why I'm so grateful that you join us for this segment of the show, Yudisthira, because your words have been very helpful for me in my recovery and on living my best life. So
Beautiful. And if you don't mind, tell Divya I said hello.
I will.
All right. Blessings, my friend.
And I will take you backstage now and
Okay.
say goodbye to the viewing audience. Hi, Mom. All right. Yudhisthira has helped us understand the chakras a little bit better today. And I just wanted to tell you that if you're having trouble with doing any of these things, persistence is a virtue and you can do it. When I got started, I was so agitated all the time, and it was impossible for me to do it. But I learned to calm down. I learned when I'm calm, it's amazing what I'm capable of. And I believe that's in you. The flower is